from the center of the universe. Now in its 8th season, covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. This is the Xs and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the Xs and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name is Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, and we are here to get you set for the CNE Game, arguably the biggest event for the Toronto Argonauts on their 2026 calendar, as the Hamilton Tiger Cats come to town in a huge East Division matchup with all sorts of implications in the standings. Plus, it's a CNE game, so there's always a little bit of craziness when the circus is in town. Here is what is on the docket for today. A couple transactions, two signings that suggest that injuries are going to become an issue, and an interesting release that we'll get into in a bit more detail. Plus, we're going to talk about why it's so difficult for defenses to prepare for two different QBs when you don't know who is going to be the starting quarterback. It's happened to the Argos a lot this season so far, and as we sit recording this, we don't know for sure who the Argos are going to face again this Saturday, whether it's going to be Frost or Ford, and we'll talk about how that sets up, how you prepare for it, and why it's such a unique challenge in sports. Plus, we've got a great pick six question for you. We've got our game preview. We've got our injury report. We've got OCDC. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about how you compensate for a lack of pass protection, something the Argos have been struggling with in recent weeks. And we've got one thing, put me down for 20, and our challenge flag. All that and more coming up on this episode of the Xs and Argos podcast. Let's go right into transactions, JB. These seem to me to be responses to injuries. We had LP Gauthier go down last week with an Achilles injury. We've got all three Canadian defensive linemen banged up. Ojo is on the 6-game injured list. Paris Chan went down with an injury, and Jonathan Kongbo, he's gone down a number of different times and has battled through injury after injury after injury, but he's on the injured report as well. We'll talk more about that a little bit later, but the reaction there is to bring in Gabriel Maisonneuve. He was drafted by the Alouettes out of the University of Montreal, 6'3", 236. He's an interesting player, and JB, I'd love your take on players like this and where they have obvious strengths and what some of the weaknesses might be. 6'3", 236 to me is light, and that was my concern when he came out of the University of Montreal. He's got great speed, extremely twitchy, ran a sub-7 3-cone, sort of blew that competition away in his testing, and you see it on film. That translates. Like, he's a really twitchy athlete, extremely explosive and fast, but he's been without a gig, and he's brought in now. What is your worry, JB, when you've got a 236-pound defensive lineman, even though they could legitimately get after the quarterback? They've got great athleticism and speed.
It definitely is not ideal. You're probably not going to be able to stay on the field. You're going to be on for obvious passing, long downs. So I think as a specialist, it's fine. But in terms of being able to lock in, 50% of the snaps, that's an issue, because for sure you would run at that end.
And even when you say, because you might look at this matchup and think, well, Tre Ford is likely going to be the quarterback this week. Isn't it good to have a fast guy out there chasing after Ford? Yes and no. The problem is, if you let that tackle get a hold of you, you're kind of washed out of the play. And so if you have to take a wide path around the tackle to get at Ford, you're just opening up far more room to run through. So I'm nervous about him having to play a lot of snaps. I really like him as a player. He was a guy that I had projected as 44th overall in my draft rankings, and that's exactly where he was drafted. And I liked him better than consensus in terms of defensive lineman. I think I had him as my 8th ranked defensive lineman in the 2025 draft. So I really do like him as a player. But I think, especially as a special teams contributor, I think there's a lot of positives there. I don't want him to be in a situation where he has to play a lot and where teams can kind of focus on attacking that area, like you said. And then the other signing, Istvan Assibo-Dadzie, the DB out of Windsor. This is a guy that we were very excited about when the Argos drafted him, but never really got a full sense of his measurables. He was hurt during testing during the lead up to the 2025 draft, and so we didn't have a sense of where he was going to go in the draft. Ended up being selected 30th overall by the Argos. He is a corner who has very good ball tracking ability. Another guy, though, that you just don't want to have to throw out there right away. And LP Gauthier has been playing a ton of snaps. He's been on the field a lot for the Argos. And I don't know that I feel ready to put him out there. I feel ready to put him out there on specials. Just, very similar story to Maisonneuve. These guys are great athletes. I love having them on the team. I think they're both able to be contributors immediately on special teams. I worry about them getting onto the field, and I'm worried they might have to just because of how thin it's getting. JB, are you concerned at this point about Canadians being injured? Because that seems like it's the one thing you can't really recover as well from when you have an American position injury situation where multiple guys get banged up at the same spot. There just seems to be more water in the well there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, injuries are clearly piling up for the Argos, so it's a problem in general. But yeah, getting Canadians who can stay on the field in the CFL is not easy, and so you're right. Like, not all injuries are the same. Where, if you lose an American DP, it's I won't say it's easy, but it's relatively straightforward to find somebody. But Canadian injuries are a double concern, absolutely.
And you look at maybe the best example over the last few years was Saskatchewan being forced to play Kerfala Exume at corner last season. An amazing special teams player, incredible athlete, great U Sports player, but it's just so hard to find starting positional guys, especially at particular spots like corner. And as amazing as Exume is as a football player, he got roasted. He just got picked on again and again and again. It was embarrassing, and I hated it so much because of how much I love and respect him as a football player. And he looked like he didn't belong, and that's because it's not what he's there for. He's there for other stuff, and I think you can find a ton of great Canadian contributors at special teams spots, but in terms of needing positional play, snap after snap, it's tough. Those guys are very limited, and when teams have them, they pay them very well. They hang on to them because there's a finite number of them. The corresponding move here. There's a couple, to make up for the two guys. So Mackay Polk has been put on the 6-game injured list according to CFL Transactions. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit more later. And the Argos have released running back Wiabe Mambo, the draft pick from this year. He 5'11", 215. It was an 8th round pick this year for the Argos, which I thought was a steal. I love that draft pick in the 8th round. He's a heck of an athlete. And it feels like this kind of was maybe always the plan. It sounds like 3 Down Nation's reporting that he's going to go back to Windsor for his final season of eligibility. He hasn't played a snap yet. He's been on the practice roster all season. We're at the deadline for him to be able to do that. I love that he has that option. I think this is actually handled very well by the club, by Mambo himself, and I guess by the University of Windsor too. He's had the benefit of training with this pro team, being at practice, being on the practice roster, and now he can bring that experience back to Windsor, have a final senior season where I'm sure he's going to look amazing, and then give it another shot next season. So I love that part of it for Mom. When I first heard that he was being released, I was like, oh man, like that's terrible to have to lose a guy like this with so much athletic potential. But then I realized what the long-term plan probably was there. So I think that's a nice move. JB, let's talk about why it's so hard to go into a game like this Saturday where you're playing the Hamilton Tiger Cats. At this point, as we record this, we're not positive who the Argos are going to see. And it just feels like this has happened to the Argos so many times this year where they have brought in new guys. You go all the way back to the Winnipeg game where we didn't know if it was Kolaros going to be back. Was it going to be Elgersma that was going to be in? Was Drew Brown going to be ready in time? We had no idea who the starting quarterback was going to be. And this situation might be even more difficult than most, where you've got Harrison Frost, a pocket passer, Tre Ford, a speedster, a passer first, but a guy that burned Toronto in their last matchup, not on designed runs, but on runs after the play broke down. Why is it so hard, JB, to prepare for two different guys for a defense?
Well, it's just hard to prepare for a running quarterback. I don't think usually it's too difficult to prepare for two pocket passers. It might be a tweak here or there, but it's pretty straightforward. But a running quarterback or a quarterback who runs option or something along like veer or something, it's almost a different sport. That's what makes it so challenging. Now, often teams do develop over the year ways to adapt to it, but it's hard the first couple of times because you have defenders for all six offensive players, and that's how your defense is built. They have six offensive guys, and you've accounted for them all. But when the quarterback is a weapon, they suddenly have an extra guy. It's like a power play in hockey. There's an overload, and you don't have somebody there. And if you haven't figured out how to handle that overload, you're in trouble. It requires a completely different way of playing defensive line. It requires a lot more of the linebackers. So it changes how often you can play man, because if you're looking out for the quarterback, you have to, you're probably going to want to play more zone. It can dictate needing a spy. And if you have a spy, then that's one less guy you have to run your normal defense. So it really turns your defense on its head. You have to create a completely different defense. And, what can be really tough is if you don't know if both guys are going to play, you need almost two completely different game plans. Because even once you get a game plan, of course, Hamilton's going to react and change to it. But it's really challenging because what you ask of your players and the scheme that they're running is completely different when the quarterback is a running threat. And you might not have the personnel to do what is required. Usually, teams don't. Usually you don't have personnel that can, track a quarterback and can also do other things. You're usually one or the other. So it makes it hard, especially when most of the league is not a running quarterback. Like in other years in the CFL, where everybody was kind of a dual threat, that was kind of the norm, and your base defense would kind of account for that, and that's what you installed. But the league now is a pass-first, old guile, veteran quarterback. And so you're just not preparing for that. And you can see teams running into problems with that with Tre Ford, because that's just not what you practice for the majority of the teams. And now you have to come up with this, very different program to try and stop this one guy. And even then, it can be really hard because he is so fast and quick. And, it's like trying to catch a greased pig. It is not easy for those big boys on the line. It presents real challenges. I mean, not insurmountable challenges, of course, but until you kind of get a sense of what to do, and it's hard when you don't play a running quarterback all the time. You're not going to practice that defense over and over and over again. It's going to be like, oh, Hamilton's here. Well, let's spend a day and a half installing a new defense, and it's just so hard for that defense to be efficient. Normally, like, you install a base defense and you practice it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then it's fine. And you just can't do that because there's nobody else like Tre Ford in the league currently. So it's definitely challenging. I mean, if I were Hamilton, I thought it worked to perfection last week, where you start the pocket guy, and then in the second half you come out with the other guy, and there's just no way to have prepared for both.
And you saw that with Saskatchewan. They couldn't handle it. Now, that wasn't by design for Hamilton, because Frost came out in the first half. He was actually playing okay, but Saskatchewan clearly had some answers. They had spent some time on a game plan for him. And teams always prepare a little bit for the backup, but you've only got a certain number of defensive reps that you're going to take. So it's not like they spent half of their practice period last week preparing for Ford. They didn't. They probably talked about it in meetings. They probably went through a little bit, did a couple reps in practice. But you could see, like, Frost got hurt at the end of the first half, and it felt like Saskatchewan was going to win that football game. Ford came out in the second half, and Saskatchewan didn't have an answer. He looked sensational, whether it was throwing the football, scrambling, buying time, going off script a little bit. Saskatchewan wasn't ready. And I think the reason for this, I think people maybe have more trouble understanding this when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, it's the same as the offense, where you want to look different every week. So you've noticed in watching the Argos that every single week, the plays are different. You watch every week and you don't usually see the exact same play to the exact same formation. Maybe there'll be a play that I might talk about where, hey, we saw them run this 6 weeks ago. But most often, they've taken the idea of that and now it's out of a different formation. Or now it's kind of like that play, but this guy's got a different route out of that. And I think you understand that offensively, you do it so that defenses can't prepare for specific plays, recognize them, and shut them down. The same works on the other side of the ball. Defenses are going through different disguises, but they've also got a different set of rules. So what I mean by that is you might have a rule 1 week where let's say you're very worried about jet sweeps or something like that. This one team's been killing people with a jet sweep. This is maybe a bad example, but it's the best I can think of off the top of my head. And it's a frequent sort of trigger play. So you might find that 1 week to shut down the jet sweep, what a team will do is, hey, when we see that particular receiver run jet motion, that's going to trigger an immediate blitz from the safety to where that jet sweep's going. And every defensive play we've got this week in particular, that jet motion results in this safety trigger. And so that's a rule that you've put in specific for that game plan for that week. There are dozens of these that you've got every single week. And when you are preparing to face a running quarterback and a pocket passer, you've got two different sets of rules. Like against, you highlighted some of them, but like against a pocket passer, you can be more aggressive in your pass rush. You can attack the quarterback's spot. You can be more aggressive in getting upfield. You don't have to worry about taking the long way around. You can play man because you're not worried about having your back to the QB. On second and long, you can play games because you're not worried as much about escape lanes and stuff like that. So you can run stunts pretty safely and you don't need a spy. And against a running QB, all the opposite is true. So now rush lanes become more important than simply winning the rush, winning the rep. You've got to stay in your lane. You've got to have lane integrity. You can't go recklessly beyond the QB because that's going to open up an escape hatch for Ford to pop through. Interior rushers as well, they can't get too wide. They can't let enormous B gaps open up. Man coverage is now deadly because you've got DBs with their backs to the quarterback, and then you might have to put in a spy. They've got quarterback responsibility. You said, I think, loved how you said it, like you're now basically a man short on defense. And then all of your zone read, your QB run, your RPO rules, like your scramble rules, all that stuff that you're going to have to go over in practice. And if you've got let's say you've got 30 meaningful team reps devoted to an opponent to practice every day, how many of them are you now spending on version A versus version B? It basically means that you're half as prepared as you would be if you're only prepping for one style of quarterback. So that's why I think this is huge for this week. And yet again, just another situation where it's bad luck, where you don't know, like Dolegala or Ford the last time they played Hamilton, the Winnipeg situation that I just went through. It's tough when you don't know who you're going to get. Let's look at the other side of the ball, JB, and maybe talk about the struggles the Argos have had in pass protection. It highlighted itself a couple times this season. I thought last week was one of the major problems for Toronto. They lost the game not because of the number of sacks they gave up, but I felt like Edmonton's pass rush posed so many issues that it was a bigger problem that ended up affecting multiple different position groups and caused the Argos to play a little bit tight. I didn't think Chad Kelly really looked like Chad Kelly last week. I felt like he was having to get rid of the ball a little sooner than he was ready for. I felt like, and maybe some of that is worrying about throwing picks and the number of picks he threw before. And to be fair to Chad, he didn't have any interception-worthy throws last week. He did throw one interception, and it was not on him at all. But I almost would rather see the other Chad Kelly throwing the ball downfield and taking more risks. But it's hard to do that when you're worried about pass protection. You're worried about getting hit every time you drop back to throw. So I want to talk briefly about things you can do to combat the stress of having poor pass protection or below average pass protection, which is what the Argos have got right now. So number one, you can get rid of the ball fast. I don't love this as a long-term, all game long thing. Ultimately, if a team's just going to rush 4, you just have to have the manpower to be able to pick that up. But I think generally your strategy going into it is let's get the ball out quick. And so that's your slants, your hitches, your speed outs, and all those routes. If the ball's gone in 2 seconds, then your tackle doesn't need to necessarily win the rep every time. He just needs to lose slowly enough, and that can make a short passing game effective. Screens, we've talked about all season long. Every manner of screen, just have something else for that defensive line to think about. That's going to help out your tackle. It's going to help your interior linemen as well. Get them thinking, wait a second, am I being allowed to win here? Because that's what you do on a screen. On a screen, you let the defensive line believe that they won the rep, that they beat you, and now suddenly you punish them by getting blockers out in front of the ball carrier. If you've got that in the back of their heads, you're running so many screens that now the D-line is like, wait a second, did I just win this or am I being played? That's a weapon that you can use. We talked a lot this year about moving the launch point. I still continue to love that. If you're changing where the quarterback's going to be, it's harder for the D-line to tee off. They've now got to sort of hesitate, read, and react, and that gives your pass protectors a little bit of an edge because they know where the quarterback's going to be. They can angle to it. And then if there's a guy that you just can't take care of, there's someone that's dominant, you're struggling with one particular guy or one of your tackles, one of your guards, one of your center, like someone is struggling, help out. You've got running backs to be able to do that. You can chip the problem. You can chip away at that edge rusher if he's causing problem. You can have a running back in a sniffer position if you're giving ground to an interior pass rush. Like those are ways that you can pass protect. And in general, you can bring in more numbers. You can bring in running backs. You can bring in slot backs to help with protection. You don't need to just block with 5 guys. But I kind of like that too. Like I think almost in some ways going empty, having 6 receivers, in some ways that's actually easier for the quarterback and the line because the defense has to declare. When you go 6 wide, it's harder for the defense to now play games. They kind of have to be able to match up or else they're going to get burned. And a quarterback can now see, okay, I know there's pressure. I see where it's coming from. And the O-line, the same way, knows where the pressure is coming from too. And they can get those calls right. And then lastly, play action helps. Running the football helps. RPOs help because now the O-line is basically just run blocking on an RPO, but you still have the option to pass. And then the one I'm going to end with, which is the rant I went on in our post-game reaction episode last week, tempo. Run a lot of no huddle. It helps so much because the D-line gets tired, and a tired D-line is far easier to beat than the O-line. And if you're asking, well, why doesn't the O-line get tired? It's just different. It doesn't take the same amount of energy, sustained energy to block as it does to be blocked and to explode out every single play. Defensive lines tire more quickly than offensive lines do. JB, what can you add to this? How do you fix this pass rush situation? Sorry about my long rant. I'm into this rant mode now.
Yeah, look, there's not much you can do. It's a huge hole in your roof. You can not stand under the hole, but you're gonna get rain in your house. Like it's a problem. There's only so much you can scheme for it, because how you scheme for it, like you talked about, is relatively limited. So, if your whole playbook is now shrunk down to adapting to this problem, that makes it much easier for the defense because you can't run your full playbook. Of course, there's traditional things you can do. You can have backs in. You can run more, which we've talked about. Maybe you can bring an extra lineman on to try and run more, to kind of slow down that pass rush a little bit. Like you said, getting rid of the ball quickly, timed routes. That's not what certainly what Chad likes to do. But a little bit of that I think has to be mixed in, kind of quick slants and quick screens, to try and slow down that pass rush as best you can. But, they haven't had a lot of screen success. I think I agree with you. You call for it. They have to improve their screen game. It is one of the more effective ways of doing it. Maybe they want to do some like tight end screens or middle screens or, something to slow down just being fired out of a cannon, because when they're fired out of a cannon, it's the play is basically over. And it's hard. It gets in the quarterback's head. The quarterback's clock gets sped up, and they're not able to look at the field properly because they're worried about getting smashed by a huge human. That is a problem, and it happens. Quarterbacks sometimes their clock gets sped up and it's really hard to undo. So yeah, you do have to adapt to it a little bit for sure. Change, more hard counts. I think, there's kind of a list of things you can do that can help a little. But man, you can't have incompetency at tackle. You can scheme up, like you talked about losing slowly on the edge, but if you're a turnstile, I mean, I don't want to be too fatalistic about it, but it's a huge problem. It's like you can paddle as much as you want, but like when the water's pouring in from the side of the boat, like there's only so many tools you have.
This transitions pretty easily into our pick six question, so we may as well jump right into that. This is from David Z this week, and if you want to be part of pick six, let me tell you first of all what you get out of it. So we ask for your questions every week. We prompt on social media. If you send us your question and we answer it on the show like we are with David today, then you are entered into a draw to win a signed Adam Guillemette jersey. So, David, we got your question for today. We're answering it. You have been entered into this week's draw. If you want to be like David, look for the prompt next week on socials. David asks, are we facing a true talent crisis at the tackle position in the CFL, or are teams just failing to develop the guys that we have? I'm going to turn this over to you first, because I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, not just this year, like over the last few years. It does seem to be a growing problem, but not just in the CFL.
No, the NFL has a huge issue too. I don't know if the reasons are the same. For sure, like a lot of people have written and talked about this, that one, there's not as much practice time as there used to be, which is a good thing, I think, for player rights. But offensive line is a position that requires a lot of work, a lot of reps, a lot of details. And, they're not able to get as many reps as they need in university and then in the pros. University ball is a lot of spread options, especially the guys coming up from the States. But there's a lot of spread. It's a different way of pass protecting. That's their way of, it simplifies the position in university when you play this kind of one word, no huddle, quick football where you're simply driving out and you don't really have to set into a classic pocket passer. So guys are coming and they're not prepared because they haven't been doing a lot of what the pros do, because college is not running, college is running offenses that work in college. It's not their job to prepare them for the pros. But then there's no way to prepare them for the pros. I mean, unless you could take all the offensive linemen away to work together all winter, like there just is so little time. So few positions. Like, you're not teaching a wide receiver how to play wide receiver. But a lot of times, like professional football, like you're teaching how to play professional offensive line, and it's really hard to do. And then the position itself is preposterous. You have to be as big as a house, and you have to have the feet of a martial artist, and you have to have the smarts and the speed of an elite athlete, and you have to be able to do all of this against the toughest, roughest, meanest people to walk the earth. It's a ton to ask of a person. It just is not easy to find human beings who are large enough and fast enough and smart enough and talented enough to take on defensive linemen. I mean, like, look at Jefferson in Winnipeg. Like, how would you like to stop him? It's really, really hard to find human beings who can do it. But something has to be done. I've always talked to you about my dream of opening an offensive line, like training camp, like American Ninja or something, where it's just offensive linemen training all year round, and then potentially getting a shot, because the amount of practice time they have now is just not going to get it done. It's just too much. It's just the players are so fast and so strong. It's really difficult to find any depth at tackle.
And in the CFL, you're not even taking guys that have ever played tackle for the most part, because those guys, like guys that are tackles that have a shot to play pro, the NFL's got them. Like they're taking everyone they can. They're putting them on their practice rosters. Look what happened to the Toronto Argos first round pick this year, who's fighting, not just fighting for a practice roster spot, he's fighting for a roster spot in the NFL with the Raiders, a guy that had played his entire career at Queens, because they don't have guys like that. The NFL is desperate for guys like that. So the guys that you're getting in the CFL are guards, athletic guards that you're hoping can learn an entirely new spot, like you were saying. And I think that last point that you had is huge. You're going up against the best athletes in the world. You're going up against physical freaks. One of my favorite stories was a guy that I coached in semi-pro, a running back who played 4 years of NCAA. And I was talking to him about and asking what the biggest difference was when he got down there. And he went on about how impossible it was to suddenly have to run to the outside against these ridiculous athletes, because he'd played high school ball in Canada. He was really fast and shifty. And so he got down there to the States and he was looking to impress coaches, get some reps in practice. And he's thinking, hey, I'm gonna make a move and bounce this to the outside. No chance. This superhuman grabbed him by the jersey and chucked him to the ground effortlessly, because you've got these freaks of nature at the defensive end spot. That's who you're trying to block as a tackle. And it's so hard to do, because your kind of size requirements prevent you from being that same level of athlete, and yet you've got to block that guy. And so you've got to use a little bit of wit and guile to get it done. But yeah, like you said, it's an almost impossible task. So David, thank you for your question. It's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of what you suggested. It's a limited supply of human beings that are just built like that. And then to have the amount of time to train them with the restrictions that are in place, it's tough. But yeah, not unique to the CFL. This is football in general. At every level, it is very hard to find a tackle. And so if you are a young man growing up and are 6'7" and about 300 pounds, I've got a suggestion for you for possible career opportunities and employment down the road. Let's get into our game preview. This is a fun one every year, JB. This is one of my favorite games of the season because it's chaos. The circus is in town, figuratively, literally, a little bit of both. It's the CNE game. It's not great for parking, but it's pretty fantastic for everything else. It is the absolute best deal for an Argos ticket because your ticket gets you into the CNE for free. And I love that it's a 7 o'clock game. It's night. It's a Saturday. You go spend all day at the CNE. You do the rides. You do the food. Get that whole midway experience on. By 7 o'clock at night, when you're just about done with rides up and down the zipper, you come into BMO Field. You enjoy the football game. Plus, this year it's Argos Ticats, so that makes it even better. And you know, if as if that's not enough, the promos they've got running this year, all season long, they're really good deals. I thought last home game, the all-you-can-eat section was a huge success. It was amazing to see the upper deck like packed like that with all these people running for unlimited female bacon sandwiches. I thought was amazing. This week's promo is pretty awesome in itself. It's jerseys. So 40% off jersey sales in stadium only. So that was something that Real Sports just put out this week. If you are at the Argos game and you go to the kiosks in stadium, the Argos jerseys are 40% off. That's a tremendous deal. So if you were going to the game, maybe this is a good time to get an Argos jersey. And you can buy blank jerseys and fill them in later. You can obviously get the ones that they've got made up. You can go with one of the classics. So many opportunities for you there. And then lastly, this is our all-time Argo induction game. So Carl Braisley, Kevin Iben are being put on the all-time Argos list. This is going to be a halftime ceremony, so you can be there for this historic moment as well. So lots going on outside of the actual football game. But the football game itself is huge. It's big in the standings. We did not anticipate a Hamilton win last week over Saskatchewan. And now suddenly everything's bottled up for that second, third spot. You've got the Argos at 4-5, the Ticats only half a game back at 4-6. And Bo Levi Mitchell rumored to be walking around without a boot now. People are talking about potentially him returning for the end of the season. Who knows what kind of chaos that will invoke. This is an important game. if we hadn't both already burned our must-win armbands, this probably would be the game to throw at JB. This feels like the biggest game of the year, doesn't it?
No, I don't think so.
After all that, it's huge. If you lose this game, Hamilton's now in second and you've just lost 2 games in a row. You lost a home game. Like, how is this not a massive tilt that way?
Yeah, I think it would. I don't think it's make or break. I don't. I think there's still lots and lots of time left in the season.
You threw your must-win armband against Ottawa in week 2.
Yeah, well, I felt it was crucial because that's when you're starting. Now this is just turbulence. We're in the air. We're at cruising altitude. You don't have to, jump up and scream for the airline attendant. You hit a bit of turbulence. We're flying now. I'm not worried again until we get close to landing, if I could stretch the analogy. Yeah, look, obviously it should be a great crowd. It's a fun night. It's electric when you're down there, and it's like being in a movie. You see all you're surrounded by the lights of the carnival and the noise, and BMO's, with its fresh coat of paint, is gorgeous. Like, everything about it is fantastic. I mean, it's so great. I'm literally returning early from Nova Scotian delight for it. So that obviously means it's pretty important. But I think, in terms of the team, it isn't make or break. I think what's more important is how well the team plays. Obviously, you'd like to win, but you really have to try and string together some cleaner games. Where it's okay to lose, but you can't lose by lighting yourself on fire. And most of their losses have been like directly pointable to like a significant issue. Where they self-imploded. So that's what I'm looking for. I want them to try and get a little more consistency in what they're doing. Even if they don't win, I'd love not to be able to point to like the one thing that's a burning, bonfire of losing. It's like, well, if they hadn't turned the ball over 14 times, they might have won the game. That's what I want to see. I want to see like a good, consistent, professional game from the team.
Going to the injury reports, and that's maybe the biggest concern for the Argos this week. There's not much for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You got Shamar Bridges practice full with the hip injury. Devon Cromwell limited with a knee injury. Harrison Frost is sort of the one we're watching most carefully. He was limited with a back injury. I think that's the one the Argos are going to have their eye on the most this week, because the sooner they can decide for sure, and I'm deciding it now, I think Tre Ford's going to be the guy. I think Tre Ford's going to play the whole game. But it's easier for me. It's less risky for me to say that than it is for a team to sort of declare that. They have to be kind of ready for both. But as soon as they get the sense that, nope, Ford's going to be the guy, now you can tunnel vision in on Ford. And I kind of think you should do that a bit anyway. I think, like you kind of highlighted, Harrison Frost is easier to transition to. You can go to last week's rules. Like, you can go to there's so many other games this season the Argos have played where it's a guy that is the style of Frost, or Frosty the Throwman as they're calling him, which again is a fantastic name. So that's the one that the Argos are going to have their eye on. In terms of Argos injuries, man, you got 14 guys on the injured list this week. We saw a lot of them get banged up. It felt like every play someone new went down last week. Let me go through it here. We'll go through it alphabetically for simplicity's sake. Deshaun Amos, he went down with an elbow injury. He was limited in practice. I feel, again, a lot of these guys, it's just a guess at this point. I feel like he's going to be able to go, but we got to wait and see. Desmond Bland, left tackle, hip injury, was limited. Again, there's just no one else. There aren't guys there. He's got to be able to go. And so I expect him to just fight through it, as a lot of these guys will. Bubba Bolden, he went down with a shoulder injury. We saw him get up holding the shoulder. The fact that he was able to stay in the game, like a lot of these guys, tells you that I think he's probably, he doesn't feel good, but he's probably going to fight through it and see if he can play. Benji Franklin with the foot injury, he was limited at practice as well. I think hopefully he's going to be able to play too. LP Gauthier, I'm worried about. He went down with an Achilles injury, did not practice. Achilles always scares the life out of you when you see that. We know with the Robert Priester injury earlier in the season, we're hoping for better long-term results for LP Gauthier, but I'm concerned about that. John Haggerty is still limited with his hamstring injury. Brian Haralamana limited with a hamstring injury. That would be a huge loss potentially. Ryan Hunter with a knee injury did not practice. We'll be monitoring that very closely. At least they know they've got Chris Kolinkowski sitting there, and you can bump Nicastro if need be. But we went through this same scenario last week with Hunter, and hopefully this is him needing rest and taking the rest, and he's going to be able to tough it out and play on Saturday. Ethan John, ankle injury, limited. Jonathan Combo, foot injury, did not practice. Kevin Mittal, hamstring injury, limited. Mackay Polk did not practice with a foot injury. He's, according to the CFL transaction page, been put on the 6th game. And Jake Herzler, who played for Polk last week, he was pretty quiet, didn't do very much. I think we were expecting a bigger game. Maybe the week of practice with the ones that extra week now gets him more involved. We'll have to wait and see. And then Paris Shan did not practice with an oblique injury. Those are always really tough for D linemen to recover from. And then lastly, Alex Tubner, hamstring injury, was able to practice full as he makes his way off the 6-game injured list. JB, what do you say about having basically an entire team banged up right now?
It's a huge problem. The team that wins the championship in almost any league is the team that is the healthiest. And sometimes you catch the right. Look at Saskatchewan, same way. Like, sometimes you catch the breaks. Montreal is really very healthy, and they're very, very good. Those are not unrelated facts. Just some years you don't catch the breaks. I don't know why that is, but it does seem to go that way. And it's not quite into apocalyptic, but you can see it from where they're standing.
It's time for OCDC.
OCDC! OCDC!
For OCDC, we will start it off with you, JB. You are the defensive coordinator for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. How are you going to stop Chad Kelly and this Toronto Argonauts offense this week?
Yeah. Look, Hamilton's defense is really good. We talked about it. I've talked about it all year. They're second in the league. They're really talented. It's a concern, and I was the same concerns I had with Edmonton, in that Edmonton and Hamilton are the two best teams at stopping the pass. They're both very good teams at creating turnovers and interceptions. The Argos do not match up great against either defense. So I think if you're Hamilton and you watched that game last week, you're going to feel empowered to try and rush 4 to get pressure, and that leaves you 8 guys who can play pass defense behind that. And 8 guys is a lot. That's a lot of guys filling a lot of man zone combos. That can be really challenging. If you're looking for what you're trying to create, I think that you definitely want to pressure with 4. You're not worried about the run at all, and you're doing what we've talked about. I think you vary it up, and in general, you want to have probably at least 2 guys deep to take away the big play that Chad is always looking for. He will, especially if he's being rushed, he will take those shots, and if you have a deep safety, there's going to be an arm punt pick there. And the underneath stuff, you just mix that in. You mix in some zone, because Chad trusts his arm, and he will throw underneath balls that are dangerous. So I think you're always keeping him guessing with a mixture of the deep coverage and then some like tighter man coverage underneath, because the receivers are not super fast in terms of getting off that kind of press coverage. It's a pass first offense, so from a defensive point of view, it's a pass defense. It does make it harder on the O-line and harder on the offense if it's a one-dimensional. So from an OCDC point of view, it's hard to generate something interesting, because there's only one thing Toronto's going to try and do. They're going to try and throw the ball 400 times. So you're just going to play a pass-first defense, and that puts a lot more pressure on the receivers and on Kelly. Now, luckily, Toronto's receiver crew is really good. But Hamilton is going to be fired up. It's going to be a really physical game. So, like, I think this is a big game for Mattel. But defensively, 4-man rush, 2-man deep, and, just wait for Chad to throw you the ball.
For the offense for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, my first step is I'm going with Tre Ford. He always plays well against the Argos, played well against them last time. Hamilton got the win, looked good last week in the second half. He's your guy, I think, for this week. And my focus is going to be about the threat of running more than actually running himself. I actually don't want Tre Ford to run very much, but my whole plan is going to be about forcing the Argos to account for him. And I'm trying to make one defender wrong all evening without repeatedly exposing Ford to contact, because that's something that you can't risk. You've got, Bo's out, obviously. Dilagala, I'm not sure is helping you anyway. Frost is banged up. You can't have Ford banged up too. So using his speed, the threat of his speed without actually taking hits. We're going to move the pocket a lot. We're going to get him outside and basically read, throw, or get out of bounds. Like that's your strategy as you leave the pocket and force everyone to scramble. Again, you're changing launch points. You're helping it that way. I think zone read action without actually keeping it, though, you're forcing the defense to play honest. Like, this is huge. Like, show the mesh point, make the backside, and respect the QB. And if he has to sit there all day, and he will because he has to respect Ford, then great. It's going to help your run game. If they do like what the Argos did last time they played Tre Ford, where the end actually crashes after the back, well, now you're pulling a linebacker because he's got to account for Ford. You only need to run it like 2 or 3 times to keep that threat viable and to keep everyone doing their rules. Like, if you don't run at all, eventually the defense is going to stop respecting it and they're going to play less honestly. So you just have to a couple times a game, and then you can slide out of it. That's fine too. And I think making scrambling part of the offense is going to be in my plan as well. Spread the field, create very clear reads, but let Ford's athleticism dictate what happens. And if something breaks down, buy some time. That's where a lot of those big plays come from. Those escapes from the pocket, which he's so good at, and he keeps his eyes downfield. And Toronto DBs, obviously, this is going to be part of your defensive game plan for Toronto, but they've got to keep on their guys. It's very tough. We remember McFadden last time the Ticats played Toronto. He was in great coverage against Lawler, but after like 5 seconds, he just took a peek. He's like, why are we still running around here? And then, boom, that's where he was hit in the end zone for that Lawler touchdown. So you've got a great contradiction, I guess, in that the less you run Ford, the more valuable he actually is, the more valuable his running becomes. But if the defense knows he'll never run, that won't work. So you've got to do it a few times. But most of the day, you're going to do the other stuff that takes advantage of Toronto's rules and basically has one fewer guys playing defense because someone's got to account for Ford, whether it's the spy, the edge. And you could even RPO out of it too. Like if you know who the spy is, Toronto's got this guy spying all day. Let's say they decide Pickett's going to watch Ford, then RPO off him, make it his reads. That's the guy we're watching. And if he goes after the back, then you pull it. If he cheats towards the passing lane, then you can run it yourself. There are some great options there, and I think that's got to be the focus this week. Let's switch to the good guys, JB. What is your defensive plan for the Toronto Argonauts? How do you stop Frost, Ford, whoever it's going to be? What's your plan?
Well, I mean, like statistically, they're not a very good offense. One of the lower, bottom echelon offenses. They're definitely a team led by the defense. I think you need to keep Hamilton under 24. If they can keep Hamilton under 24, I think Toronto has a really good chance of winning. So how do you do that? Well, I agree. I don't think they're going to be so cute as to go for the 1-2. Bring in the running quarterback in the second half. No, it's just not something football coaches like doing. Like, I like the idea, but it's just antithetical to, in my experience, to how football coaches kind of roll. But we'll see. Defensively, you talked about it. You have to play incredibly disciplined. You have to keep your lanes. You can't free rush. You can't just shoot up the gap and try and cause chaos. Interior guys have got to get in a lane and have to play to pressure and cannot get too far upfield. You're going to push that pocket up, but you can't let them escape past you. And the outside guys have to set the edge, and have to make sure that they don't allow him to get outside. You have to make sure you're playing like, with you're playing with your downfield shoulder meeting his upfield shoulder. Like, you have to make sure that you're keeping him in the pocket, force him to throw the ball. If you do that, he's not good enough quarterback. If he were, he'd be making a lot of money if he could do both. He can't, not consistently. He'll make a nice throw now and again, but he's not going to make 25 great throws. You have to keep him in the pocket. So from a rush point of view, I wouldn't so much blitz as just make sure you have your gap responsibility. Make sure guys are in their gaps. Make sure you're not getting too far upfield, but also like make sure that if he's deep, you're getting deep too. And for God's sakes, for the love of all that is holy, I know if he steps inside, you want to do it, but you have to stay outside. You can't jump at the bait of the inside step or jump at the the handoff to the inside run. The outside end or backer has to not worry about that. All you're worried about is somebody getting outside of you and getting those free yards, because Hamilton doesn't have an overwhelming selection of wide receivers. They're fine, but it's not like you have a Phil Potts who's going to eat you alive. Due respect to Kenny Lawler. It's a team that is beatable offensively if you can figure out the Tre stuff in terms of, keeping him cornered and kind of break him down. And when you get your chance, put some weight on him, because he's not a huge dude, not on his head, but on his body. That's what you hope to see. Is you hope to see, like, maybe you go more linemen, maybe you go 5 linemen. I've certainly tried that, and you kind of go bare front, and you're just like, we're just going to keep everything in front of us. And if he throws for 300 yards, then, I will, then honor is due. But I don't think he's going to throw for 300 yards, and that's what I would force him to do what he doesn't want to do.
For Toronto's offense, it's a lot of the usual stuff that I want to focus on every week, and I've talked about some of them already in ways that you can compensate for an O-line that's struggling a little bit in pass protection. That's the screens, the quick passes, and everything else. But I think there are 2 ideas that we can really focus on. One is motion, and the other is tempo. I talked about both of these in the post-game reaction pod after the Edmonton game. Motion first. I just don't feel like the Argos use a lot of it in their offense, and there was a real contrasting style to what we saw Edmonton use. They had a ton, and it causes problems for DBs. Defensive coordinators hate motion. They would much rather you line up and snap the ball exactly as you line it up, because then you've got guys doing less math on the fly, having to figure stuff out. And so I want a lot of receiver motion. I want a lot of motion into the backfield, guys coming in and out. It changes guys' rules. It conflicts. Have guys cross over where you're not sure who the outside guy is on the snap. You're forcing DBs to communicate with each other, and every so often you're going to get a mistake. Run jet motion, even if you're not handing it off. Run orbit motion, even if you're not handing it off. Again, that's stuff to slow down the D line, but it also messes with the DBs. So I want to see way more motion than we have seen from the Argos this year. That's number one, to slow down that Hamilton pass rush and to create busts in the Hamilton secondary. And they don't bust a lot. That's a good Hamilton defense. We had this team ranked very highly preseason. We felt like Montreal and Hamilton were going to be very tough in the East, but we didn't foresee the Bo Levi Mitchell injury. But it's just that one player away. The rest of the team is still very good, and that defense, like you highlighted, is very talented. So do everything you can to force them to make mistakes. Motion's the big one. Tempo. So I've talked about using no huddle. Coach Miller likes to use no huddle. I want to see more of it. Run entire drives, no huddle. And I mentioned sugar huddles in our postgame reaction pod, and I want to expand on that a little bit because I did have a couple questions about sugar huddles this week. So essentially a sugar huddle is a huddle that is almost right on the ball. So normally you would huddle up about 10 yards off the ball, and then you break the huddle, everyone runs up to the ball and snaps it. A sugar huddle is like a few feet from the ball. It's a very tight huddle so that the defense isn't hearing your communication within the huddle. And you've got a couple of quick words where if as soon as the quarterback sees somebody trying to substitute on defense, they immediately hit a keyword, you line up instantly and snap the football, and you get them for a 5-yard penalty. And it's highly frustrating as a defense because you're not necessarily running tempo. You're still bleeding the clock. You're still allowing your own defensive guys to rest, but the defense can't substitute because if they try to, you'll immediately snap the ball. Now, it limits you a bit in that you can't substitute either, because as soon as you substitute, now the defense is allowed to. You can't go and snap it right away. But that's okay. I'm fine with that. I'll sacrifice that. Run with your base personnel and keep them out there, sugar huddle it. As soon as you see one of those big D linemen try to sub out, snap the ball, take your 5 free yards. It's going to tire them down that way. So my plan, along with all the other stuff I mentioned earlier in how to play offense with difficulties in pass protection, add in motion, add in tempo. I think that's how you win this week. My one thing, JB, which we're struggling a bit last week. My one thing this week, you got to go into half with the lead. If the Argos go into the half with the lead this week, they win the football game. Last week, your one thing was no turnovers. The Argos had 6. Can you do a bit better this week, please?
Well, I guess I should have said no more than 5 turnovers. Well, look, I choose what I think they need. I thought they needed that, and turns out they did. For me this week, it's keeping Ford under 25 yards running. I think if they can keep him under 25 yards, they have a really good chance of winning the game.
It is time for Put Me Down for 20. Not a bad week for you last week, JB. I struggled. I was so close, though. Your win came on BC on the money line at plus 202. I had that as well, but I parlayed it for plus 1,000 with Ottawa on the money line. I got greedy. And to be fair, Ottawa should have won that game by like 14 points. You know what
parlay is Latin for.
I know. It's always death. But I was so tempted by that number. Ottawa... Oh, man, they found new ways to disappoint me in their play. They had so many things go wrong. They hit the uprights on a guaranteed touchdown. Another guy blew out his hamstring on what looked like was going to be a touchdown. They find so many ways to throw away points that no one does. These are highly unusual things that happen, and they seem only to happen to the Ottawa Redblacks. It was painful having to cheer for them for the sake of my fleeces last week. Man, I do not know how you do it, Ottawa Redblack fans. Let's get to this week's bets. You're up from last week, so you're now at 214 golden fleeces from your original 200. I'm all the way down to 150, so I need to rally a little bit. I gotta start tightening up even more so, I think. So here are my plays for this week. I think you're getting great odds on Nick Arbuckle touchdown. He's the short yardage specialist. He's the guy that's going to get the ball in the end zone. Did that last week. He's paying at plus 260, getting quarterback sneak specialist odds. Most of those guys are like minus 150. So Arbuckle, 10 fleeces on a touchdown at plus 260. And my other play, oh man, I don't even know. I wrote this down earlier. Now I'm regretting it. 10 golden fleeces on the Ottawa Redblacks plus 13.5. It's just so big a spread. I know Montreal's bringing back 4 defensive starters this week, and it's just not, and it's in Montreal. But anytime I see a spread like that, I'm going to be a sucker for it. So here I am again after just saying so. I'm cheering for the Ottawa Redblacks this week plus 13.5. Tell me you're doing something more sensible with your fleeces this week, JB.
I have my engagement with the all caps has come to an end. I wish them all the best in their future endeavors. For me, I have the Argos D at plus 295 touchdown. I think that if you can get either of the quarterbacks, neither one is kind of a vet in terms of being able to spot things. I think if you can get them in the shadow of the uprights and you bring the house, I think there's a decent chance you might get a pick there. So I got the Argos D. They're due. God knows they're due. And the team needs it. The offense needs a little help, and the defense could do a lot worse than to score a touchdown at home. And I have Saskatchewan at plus 100. A bit of a grind odd, but there just wasn't a lot out there I was interested in, and I like Saskatchewan there, but. Stay tuned for a future hedge.
I like that play. Like Saskatchewan, I feel is going to win that game. BC's hot. They are the hottest team that isn't Montreal in the CFL right now. They've won a few games in a row, but Saskatchewan coming off a loss where they probably feel pretty embarrassed. I think I like that play at plus 100. That's pretty good odds. Let's get into Challenge Flag. This is another JB segment. I don't like how this last couple segments are going here. You won last week. I challenged you on Calgary. You picked BC over Calgary, which I thought was risky. I picked Calgary. I threw my challenge flag there. That was wrong. You went 2-2 on the week, so there were opportunities for me to win, but it wasn't to be. You're now 20-22 on the season, but more importantly, you lead me 7-4 in challenge flag. Let's go through your picks for this week. Ottawa at Montreal. Who do you have?
Montreal.
All right, I was hoping maybe. Winnipeg at Edmonton.
Yeah, this is kind of a tasty game.
It is.
But look, Edmonton, I've said it. I thought that they were going to be a problem for Toronto. And, you have to play really well to beat Edmonton. I think Edmonton is a much better team than Winnipeg. So I like Edmonton at home.
Hamilton at Toronto.
Yeah, look, this is a tough game. I think Toronto, I often pick Toronto because Toronto can beat any team in the league when they play well, and I think that's the case here. They can beat Hamilton. Hamilton is not going to put up 40 points on them. Toronto has the ability to do that. So I'm going to take Toronto, but it won't be easy.
That's the thing. Like the Argos are 4.5 to 5 point favorites, depending on where you see it. But it makes me nervous. Like this game is not a typical feeling you have from a game where you're favored by 4 or 5.
No, I'm surprised at that. Truthfully, I would have had that. I mean, that I think that just speaks to Hamilton's quarterback mystery. But yeah, I don't love. I would have that as a pick 'em at the very least.
Saskatchewan at BC to close out the weekend.
Well, I'm not going to give you a BC at home opportunity, so I will take BC at home.
I love it. That's my challenge right there. I think Saskatchewan. This feels like my guaranteed win of the week. I like Saskatchewan over BC in BC.
Oof, I love your.
That's where I'm throwing my challenge flag. They're a good team. Saskatchewan is a very good football team. I see it still as Montreal. They're in their own tier. They're at the top. But I think Saskatchewan, Edmonton are tier 2, and I'm not ready to put BC up there with them, despite their recent success. I think they're in the next tier down with your Torontos and your Calgarys and everybody but Ottawa, I guess, which is sitting all on its own in tier 4. So yeah, I will happily put my challenge flag on that BC game. I have the Rough Riders in week 12. It's going to be a good one this weekend, Saturday, 7 o'clock start. Hamilton at Toronto for the CNE game. Remember, your ticket gets you in free to the CNE. Get there early, enjoy the rides, enjoy the midway, play some games, win a giant stuffed animal, eat some of the food. I'm excited this week. Traditionally, I get some strange food item for Mike Hogan to eat. And I will document it. And
I forgot about that. Yeah, we can do that before the game.
Yeah, we'll go find something. You need to help me find something for Mike. Last year, I got deep fried watermelon for Mike, and he did not like that at all. I thought it was okay. He really did not enjoy the deep fried watermelon. We got to up that even more. So we'll wander around pregame. JB, you got to help me out. Right. We'll find something delicious for Mike to sample. That'll just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough episode of the Xs and Argos podcast. We'll see you Saturday for the CNE game. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.